others' expectations. Family, society, class, race, sex, or religions. It's time to break free from the isms that make us feel like we're in prison. I'm ready to be unleashed as fuck. I'm ready to be unleashed as fuck. Tired of the madness, done with the sadness. Gonna break free and be unleashed.
Hello, ambitious. I need a different intro because ambitious does not roll off my tongue. So I keep saying I'm going to work on it, and I just can't come up with another one. So maybe you guys can come up with another word. But anyway, we are unleashed as AF.
That also doesn't roll off the
tongue. We are unleashed AF, and we've got some great shit for you today. Today we're diving into the spectrum of activism. We're going to talk about why this topic, why now, what is the spectrum of autism? Spectrum of activism. And three, some resources that we're going to have for you. I'm Deidre Beecham, with fumbling around with my mouth, but I am Deidre Beecham, visibility catalyst, nice girl dropout. I left a religious cult, came out of the closet, and walked away from a soul-sucking 20-year marriage. Over 27 months, I rewired my mind. Yes, you can brainwash yourself. Shattered nice girl training and reclaimed my power voice. Now I help soulful women to do the same, faster, bolder, and on their own terms.
And I'm Jenny Badig, hypno coach and human factors engineer. I empower people to tap into their subconscious superpowers, to be used for good, of course, and to achieve their full potential. And welcome to the Unleashed AF podcast, where we help you own your greatness and unleash your authentic self. Enjoying our shows? Be sure to like, share, follow, subscribe, all those social media verbs, and drop your thoughts, questions, or suggestions in the chat or comments, or on our webpage, which is unleashedafpodcast.com. There's a page on there that's WWJDD, which is what would Jenny and Deidre do. So that's an opportunity for you to give us feedback or ideas or suggestions. We do this podcast for you guys, and we love hearing from you.
Absolutely. In our last episode, we talked about, and our last episode was a couple of weeks ago.
Yes.
We had illness, we had technical issues, but we are back. We went for a good 40 weeks without missing an episode, and we missed 2, and now we're back on track again. So
yes.
If you missed our last episode, we talked about building unshakable confidence and resilience. If you'd like to check that out, if you missed it, it's currently available on YouTube and Facebook at Unleashed AF. The week in review. Oh my goodness, Jenny, it's a doozy. And now, of course, we're talking about 3 weeks, and we cannot go through all the things because it's a lot of shit.
We even when we were planning to come back that next week, but then couldn't end up being here that next Friday, we already had a shit ton of stuff to talk about. And then it's like, now we're going, how do we even, where do we even start? There's so much crap that's been going on. But we tried to narrow it down to the highlights whatever. We tried.
Yeah, we tried. There are just a few things we wanted to mention. Certainly the DEI wars. There are corporations that are diehard saying, no, we are not going to take our DEI initiatives down, and others that are freely bending their knee. One of the most recent was, of course, Google bending the knee and renaming the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America. Like we can do that. But some of the good ones, we have Ben & Jerry's, Costco, Dunkin' Donuts. They have, and there are others, certainly have made a stand and have doubled down on their DEI initiatives, which is really nice to see because there are so many. And one of the big backlashes was, of course, Target. You heard about that.
Mm-hmm.
Right, Jenny?
Yeah.
Right. They took down their DEI initiatives, and then there was a backlash of all the people not going and shopping with them, and they started losing money, and the shareholders were not happy. So they went, ooh, we're so sorry.
Oops.
Oopsie daisy. Let's see.
And that's a good example of what we've talked about in the past, of where it's not just every 4 years you get to vote or every 2 years for the midterms, but you can vote with your activities, your spending practices.
right now, which, in this week in review, this is actually the reason why we're doing this today. The reason why the spectrum of activism is really, really important, critically important, is because of some of these things that have happened.
Mm-hmm.
We already answered number 1.
That's right.
I don't know if anybody heard about Hillman Talk University. It's kind of in the past now. It feels like it was forever ago. It feels like it was 6 months ago. It was just a few weeks ago. But Hillman Talk University started on TikTok, and that was such a cool thing. Right in the middle of all the darkness was with all of the DEI and all of the hateful legislation that's coming out of government. It was like this breath of fresh air of professors that were coming over and teaching people about Black history, and it was just really cool. I love shadow bans now; it's hard to find, but it was such a neat thing to happen in the middle of all this. And you heard about the 19th century law suspending birthright citizenship, saying that Native Americans. Actually, this person says it's not fair. This lady is out of Ireland. You wouldn't think that's where we were going.
Right.
Out of Ireland. And she just has a few choice words. We're not going to run the whole thing, although we will upload this onto the Facebook site. But just hear what she thinks about this.
I don't know how many times I've actually tried to film this, but I'm going to read something that I've just read. Now, obviously, this is being read from social media. I didn't think this man could do anything more to fucking shock me. In fact, he can't shock me, or so I fucking thought. It says excluding, Callie, go. It says excluding, and then there's a derogatory term for Native Americans. Trump admin questions Native Americans' birthright citizenship in court. Native Americans. He's on their stolen land. Native fucking Americans. The Trump administration.
She goes on. Mm-hmm. She's saying, yeah, she's saying all the things I know I was feeling when I heard this.
Yeah.
It's a question that anyway. Oh, it just gets crazy.
Yeah.
Let's see what else we have here. Of course, and this is a little shining light. Heard about Cincinnati, Ohio. The Proud Boys came out and marched across a bridge. Neighborhood reacted. Police came, and they were on the bridge, and they were keeping the people from the neighborhood, the Black neighborhood there, from kicking the Proud Boys' ass. And one of them grabbed their Nazi flag and burned it. It was an awesome moment. And I listened to a version of the tape before. I know that Jenny, you and I had talked about this before, and we were talking about how they were there, kind of protecting the Proud Boys, and that is true. They were helping them not to get beat up. But I actually was pretty happy with how they reacted, because they kept turning to the people that were coming down the hill and saying, "It's not worth it. It's not worth it." And a couple of them turned to the cops and said, "It absolutely is." And it is. But I was, at least from the footage I saw, I didn't see any cops get out of hand. I was very happy to see that. And of course, then the Nazis left, which was really good.
Yeah. And I will say, having grown up about an hour outside of Cincinnati, so I saw this from like my friends on Facebook posting about it. And not necessarily Cincinnati itself, but I mean, Ohio is a red state now. It wasn't always, I don't think, when I was younger. It's kind of purple, but there's definitely a lot of rural areas of Ohio, so it falls into that typical category. And so a lot of people that I knew from high school, from my small town, are of the red ilk. And I was pleasantly surprised to see that even though they were posting that, they were also saying, "I can't believe this is happening." Like, well, we keep telling you people that this is what you're supporting. And you go, no, I don't support that. But you are. So, yeah.
Wow. Also, wanted to make a quick note. I know Jenny and I have talked before about how feels like we're sliding in through rabbit holes. It's just a slippery slope down rabbit holes. We were talking about how Trump is actually sliding through the carpal tunnel, because of all of the executive orders that he is signing. As of 2/12, and of course it is now 2/14, but as of 2/12,
February 12th.
Yeah, February 12th. He had 60 at that time.
Which was surprising to me. When I looked this up, I really thought it was more than that, because it seems like it's been just a blizzard.
Yeah, it has. Because when you told me it was 60, I was like, really? Because it feels like it has just been hundreds every day, and obviously that's not true. But it just seemed like
now the thing is, some of these, part of the reason I think it does feel like there's been so many more is because some of these executive orders have, in one order that he signs, have revoked multiple other executive orders from Biden. So it's had a broader reaching effect than just, 60 things have happened. No.
True.
They've crammed a bunch of shit into some of them.
That's like getting rid of USAID. That affected a lot of people in a lot of different ways, just like overturning DEI. A lot of people in a lot of different ways got affected.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people who were really pretty surprised what was a part of DEI. Especially some white people that really wanted it to happen, finding out that, I get money from DEI. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was very interesting.
And that's part of the ignorance thing that they keep kind of pushing, is only listen to what we tell you these things mean and what we are going to do about them. I had this back and forth over the last few days, I guess, with somebody who I guess I'm friends with on Facebook, because she was commenting on my post. I don't know who she is, or maybe she's a friend of somebody else that commented on it. But she said, I mentioned something about how, he's following the Project 2025 playbook, which I thought people were like, oh no, he's not going to do that. And so this lady replied back and she was like, no, he said he hasn't even read the Project 2025 playbook. Give me specific page references. And I thought, Jesus Christ, it's a 900-page document. But I thought, what? You know what? I am going to actually go and do it. I'm not downloading the thing on my laptop or anything. I don't want any part of it. But I did go to the Project 2025 website, and you can chapter by chapter look through things and then search it, because they're PDFs. I thought, okay, to do, but I'm not sure as hell not reading 900 pages worth of shit. So I did find a handful of examples where I could show her exactly, go to this page on this chapter, and this is exactly what it says to do, and it's exactly what he did in this executive order. Because she was like, don't judge me, I'm very open-minded. I'm like, you're not open-minded.
No, you're not.
Believing him.
If she was open-minded, she would have done the research herself.
Agreed.
Yeah. No, that's just crazy.
So I don't understand. Somehow it's the thing about Trump derangement syndrome that they feel supersedes any other kind of logical, independent thinking, because anybody that says anything bad about him, they just attribute all that to Trump derangement syndrome. Oh, you just don't like him. No, have you seen? I even saw somebody post the other day this completely fake story, fabricated story by a lady who says that she was like an investigative journalist who's followed Trump for decades, and she's never heard anything bad about him until he ran for president. And I'm like, how the fuck do these people even think this is possible? He's been in so many legal issues. He's been like all three of his marriages. He's cheated on his wife. Like, how could she say that nothing's been bad said about it? Well, first of all, you can't say that and say you're an investigative journalist. Like, those two things cancel each other out.
They do.
Because it's not possible.
But what's really interesting about this is that I was watching something was talking about the radicalization. I think we talked about this, about the radicalization of teenagers, middle school kids, that's kind of where the radicalization starts, and that it's listening to things like Joe Rogan's podcast. And then there's, which is kind of like a stepping stone over into the more alt-right leaning type propaganda. I don't
Although
know all
he's
the guys'
even
names.
reversed course on a couple of things with Trump, from what I understand. So he's starting to
Sure, but he has, but
yeah.
until now, he's been a really good stepping stone for people getting into the crazy
sure.
alt-right stuff and QAnon. And then they hear things that make them feel good. You know, the reason you're not getting dates is because women, you know, are falling into this leftist crap. I mean, it just goes on and it feels good. And they're getting camaraderie. I mean, there's other people that agree with them. And then it just goes from there, and they listen. They're being brainwashed.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're being told, if you listen to anybody but us, they're lying.
Mm-hmm. They're the ones that are the sheep. Okay.
Yeah. So it's really interesting, and it's not until people stop listening to those things that, or it happens to them.
Yeah.
The propaganda face falls because you get affected by the policy.
And that's what I think is going to happen for most of those people. Because if they were able to have the empathy without actually experiencing it themselves, they wouldn't be supporting the way they are. So something's going to need to bite them in the ass.
But the problem with I think one of the reasons it's so hard is because they're in a system that supports them. It's kind of like being in church, right? You get involved in a church and you have a system that supports you. If you stop believing the thing that the preacher is saying, or the book that you're reading, and I'm not talking specifically about religion, but it's like that. So, you know, if the preacher says something, you're just like, it's not jiving with you, you stop believing the book you're reading, in this case would be the Bible. At that point, man, you either have to suck it up and stay with it because that's your community, right? Or you have to make a break. And it's so hard to do because that's your community. And now for you to go against it, now you have to say that all the things that I believe were wrong before, or damaging in some way, and I'm here. Now I'm an outsider. And I think it's really hard right now because not only are they an outsider, but now all the people that they need to be with are pissed. And so it's a really tough time right now. I think we need to have a lot more sympathy for people who are waking up to this. And I know that's really hard for some people. And when this all started, it was really hard for me. But I really do have a lot of sympathy for people who are waking up, because I'm happy you're waking up.
Yeah. Oh no, I'm completely in agreement with that. I do believe it's going to take some pain, some personal pain for some people to make that transition. And I do feel sorry for them. I wish they wouldn't have to do it.
It is. But we also need to make safe spaces for them. And that's the hard part. And that's part of the healing that we have to do as well, because we need to welcome everybody, because it's not, the more I'm learning, the more I'm seeing it's not Republican versus Democrat. It's not against independents. It's none of those. It's not against the people who voted for Jill Stein, although really people, but I'm going to say something that some people find controversial. I don't know that you will, but I think some people find it very controversial, because I believe that this moment in time still would have happened even if Kamala had gotten voted in, because we have way too many people that are very comfortable in white supremacy, very comfortable in their racism, and are terrified about white people not being the majority anymore in this country, which it is slated to not be in the majority. And I think sometime in is it 30s or is it 50s? Anyway, white people will no longer be in the majority. And they're terrified of that because they've been so mean. White people have been so mean to everybody else of any differing color, any darker colored skin. And so it scares the bejeebies out of them. So I think this moment still would have happened, even if Harris had gotten elected, because that would have made all the white supremacists and all the racists just even more upset, and
Mm.
all the very far right evangelicals that are hateful and don't follow the Bible but say they do.
Yeah.
All of that just would have brewed greater and greater and greater, and there's no way she would have made it to a second term, in my opinion. And even if she had, she would have been voted out. All that nastiness would have been brewing for even longer, and Trump probably would have died at some point, and now he's a martyr.
Right.
And now we're all, the Trumplicans are fighting against everybody because, So I still think it would have happened. I still think we'd be here.
Well, and I think, yeah, it would have brought things to even more of a head at some point. I don't know if it would have happened during her presidency or after, but that's even something. I've read a couple of things that talked about really how, from the perspective of this is vastly about white supremacy, all this
Absolutely
anger and all this stuff was talking about, it really did start back when Obama was president, because the fact that he broke through that barrier hurt them to their core.
Oh,
so
never again. Never again.
Yeah. So they really had to up the efforts to make sure that something like that never happened again. And, and then even the fact, so in some ways, it's pretty freaking amazing that he was able to get 2 terms successfully completed without there being some huge breakdown. But I kind of agree with you. I'm not sure that would be possible still at this point, because the boil has gotten to the level, like that's when things started to boil. And people that are on that side of things were like, oh, Obama divided. He's the one that really started all this, anger and vitriol and stuff like this in the country. He didn't start shit, but it was what he represented that kind of brought that crap out of these people that had been able to kind of hide it, because it's like, hey, it's still white guys running the country, white guys running the world, we're all right. But
and what happened this last weekend is a perfect example of white people getting upset because they're racist. So hang on. This weekend, we had the Super Bowl. And if you don't know who this person is, this is Kendrick Lamar. And he did the halftime show. And depending on your thoughts on it, I don't know anybody that was kind of in the middle. I don't know anybody that went, I could take it or leave it. People either loved it, like I did. I think you loved it too.
I wasn't that familiar with his songs. I knew who he was. I'd heard of him, but I wasn't that familiar, so I didn't understand what he was saying.
So I knew several of his songs, not all of them. And I didn't catch all the symbolism the first time through at all. But I knew what some of the symbolism was. I was very familiar with the song, They're Not Like Us. And so to me, I was excited about him showing up. I know how much he dislikes and calls out racism. Dislikes Trump, calls out racism, is what I was trying to say. And I think he's an amazing artist. And then to learn all the symbolism after the show was just fascinating. I mean, it's just incredible living art.
Yeah.
And then on the other side of that, you have people that were confused. I was confused, but I knew I was seeing something incredible. I knew he was doing something amazing. And
I was even confused. I didn't realize that was Serena Williams. That was the
I didn't either. Yeah.
I had no clue.
And all the meaning behind that.
Yeah.
And so it was, I can't remember the point I was making. Oh, about racists. And you had other people who were just, I'd go through and they're like, this is just disgusting. This is horrible. What a waste of time. This is my favorite. You have all this time to halftime entertainment, and they couldn't find one white person to put on the field.
Right.
Okay. So, which is so funny because there are a lot of white people that are happy that DEI is gone because they thought that DEI meant black people.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to stop giving
Black
shit
and
to black
brown.
people. Yeah, black and brown. And it turns out that the number one receiver of DEI initiatives is white women. White women. And they're finding that out. So it's really interesting to see that come to fruition, that whole thing about it being white supremacy and racism, and they still don't see it. Even though they're saying these things, they still don't see it.
Mm-hmm.
It's absolutely fascinating to me. And then we have one more thing we've got here. We'll end with this, and then we'll get into activism, unless you have something else to add, Jenny. But
No.
This one I saw this morning when I was prepping for the show, saw this one. I was like, oh, you got to be kidding me. Now, this has not passed, but it has been presented, a new bill to allow for the Nazi and Confederate flags to be displayed in Utah schools and government buildings, but pride flags would be banned.
That's about as ludicrous as I can even imagine. Like, that's so ridiculous.
You can't put a flag up for some people that are in that school to help them feel seen and supported. Can't do that. But by gosh, we're going to let you put a Confederate and a Nazi flag up. Oh,
well, apparently they feel like there are people in that school that represents.
Yeah, but should not.
Right.
Hate. It's just hate.
Right.
It's hateful. And because of that hate, that is definitely why we need to talk about this now, why we're talking about the spectrum of activism. This is Trump and everything we've seen, everything we've talked about so far in this show. It has come to the forefront, and I believe it's one of those things that has to be faced in this country. And now we're being brought to a point where we're being made to face it.
Yeah.
To face the fact that this country is incredibly racist. And yes, it is true. It is us against rich people. But before it's even us against rich people, it's us against racism. We have got to combat this racism.
Yeah. Yeah. White Christian male, cis, I guess, right? So straight white Christian male is the thing that we have to be able to deviate from and be okay with for this country to really continue. And that's kind of what we're fighting against, I think, is the idea that it has to be straight white Christian males that are running everything, or that they are more qualified than other people for any reason.
Yeah, I think, that it's just the crazy things that come out. I mean, they are the things that I have seen on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, even, of things that white people are saying. I'm like, do you not hear yourself being racist right now? And it's as if they do not care because they've been given permission to be just so horrible. Yeah, it's just nuts.
Yeah. So one of the things we were going to talk about was that first rule from the book on tyranny, and remind us what that was, since I know you read that book and are pretty familiar with it.
Yeah. So the first rule is do not obey in advance. And then I'm just going to read this little paragraph that it has here. It says, most of the power of authoritarianism, is freely given. In times like these, individuals think ahead more about what the repressive government will want, and then offer themselves without being asked. The citizen who adapts in this way is teaching power what it can do.
So there's a couple of different things that have come up, even just in the last few days, that I've been aware of around that. Certainly the buyout offer that was made to a shit ton of government employees, and many people have been saying, don't take the buyout offer for various reasons. one of which being you're unlikely to actually get paid, because look at Trump's record of actually paying his contractors over the years. And same thing with, I think, Elon, when he did the thing at Twitter. I don't think he actually paid the money that he told those people he was going to pay them either. So really not a good idea to just sort of, bow the hat and say, yep, okay, sure, I'll just pay me for 6 months and I'll, retire early or whatever. The other thing that I just saw, I think this morning, was and I don't think this is sort of the other side of it. I don't think these people are bowing down to authoritarianism earlier necessarily, but there are several entertainers that have canceled their shows at the Kennedy Center because Trump has inserted himself now as the head of the Kennedy Center.
Yeah, saw that.
Performing arts. And people are like, sorry, refund the money for the tickets. I'm not going to participate in this anymore if he's part of it. So that's sort of different than saying,
yeah, that seems more like resisting. Yeah, that seems more like resisting.
Right.
I know one of the things that I've seen being LGBT, QIA plus, anyway, as being a part of the Alphabet Mafia, one of the things that I have seen are people panicking over their appearance. They're going to know who I am. They know what I look like. I look gay. I've had other people say, "Oh my gosh, you need a lavender marriage," or telling women, you need to get a beard, or men, you need to get a beard. So that certainly is bending, is giving in before. Nobody has said, hey, if you have short hair, if you're a woman and you have short hair, the rule is actually you need to have long hair. And if you don't have long hair, then this is going to happen to you. Well, that's different. That's not happening right now. Nobody's saying you have to grow your hair. You don't need to wear a wig. That's way down the road if we even get to that point, which hopefully we don't even get to that point.
Right.
But by going ahead and making yourself small, by jumping in and making yourself small and saying, I could easily say, well, I'm not going to talk about women's issues anymore and women's empowerment because the government doesn't want us to do any programs for women. No, until I'm told I cannot, or I'm going to jail for doing it, I'm going to be doing it.
Yeah.
And it's really important. One of the first things I said on a LinkedIn post, and they were showing that on Google Maps, it now says Gulf of America.
Yeah.
And underneath it, the person that posted it said, "What in the world is happening?" And I said, "Google bent at the knee."
Yeah.
Google's just jumped right in as complicit and is telling Trump, I'm in with you, whatever you need, whatever you say.
Yeah. And I have heard that there are a lot of people who, when you bring that up on Google, you can go to the little ... thing at the top and report it as an error.
I did.
Yeah. And you can do that daily, as far as I know.
And that is a form of activism.
Exactly.
Just looking at it going, oh well, no. It may seem like, well, that's inconsequential. That's inconsequential, Deidre, Jenny, really. What does that really do? Because anything that we can do as a collective to make it difficult for them to do their job of fascism, right? Because that's now their job, to make it a fascist, neo alt-right Christian country. The best thing we can do is to make it hard to do so.
Right. Because if we're quiet or compliant, then they believe even more strongly that they are not only in the right, but in the majority. And for more of, there truly are more of us that don't want the country going that way than there are that want the country going that way. But if we don't make ourselves heard in some way, shape, or form, how were they to know? even, I don't think we had a chance to talk about this last time, but there are reports now talking about the voter restrictions, the different ways that votes
Voter
weren't
suppression.
counted. Yeah, voter suppression. That, because even in the numbers reported by anybody, it shows that there were millions of people that did not vote. Now, sometimes this is just left at, oh, these people just didn't vote, as if they didn't care to vote. But there's a huge number of those that are people who were suppressed. Their vote was suppressed. Not that they didn't care about voting. They attempted to vote and it wasn't counted for a variety of reasons because of how they purged polls and all this other stuff. So even though by the looks of just the numbers in the election results, to me, at least, that's one of the reasons I was so depressed when the election results came out, because I was like, he actually won the popular vote too? Like, what the fuck? We are outnumbered. But in reality, I don't believe we are.
I don't believe we are either.
And certainly some of those people were fooled. Some of those people don't really like him. They just wanted certain other things to happen. And they thought, well, he's the only one that's probably going to, break the law and do it anyway. So, whatever. But I do think that we need to continue in whatever way we feel comfortable, or even feeling a little uncomfortable. Sometimes you got to push the envelope a little bit to make our voices known, because it's going to be a much harder battle to come back from if we just sort of roll over and allow them to steamroll.
And that's really important. I mean, look at what happened in Cincinnati, Ohio. I mean, a neighborhood came out in force, and the Nazi brigade left. They left.
Yep. Yeah.
They weren't prepared for people to show up in force. And one of the things that we need to remember is that those types of groups, individually, these are cowardly people. They're looking for a leader. They're angry, and these are not powerful people. Together, they seem very powerful, but there's so many more of us. So just like you were saying, there's so many more of us that don't want this happening. And I've been watching videos of people calling out Nazis, and just telling them, get out of here. We're not dealing with that here. You even talked about, there was a video of somebody getting something taken off of a belt or something.
Well, there was a lady that went into some store or some business and wanted some sort of Nazi thing engraved or painted on to her thing.
On her, yeah, that's right. Put on her whatever it was that she had. It seemed like some kind of antique-y thing.
Yeah. And the guy was like, nope, we don't do that here. Yeah,
he was like, get out. He just told him, get out.
And she tried to make it seem like, oh, no, this is just, it's like my family, whatever. He's like, nope.
Nope. And then he was telling the camera, he said, look, I will take Nazi shit off of anything, but I'm not putting it on anything. And that's the kind of thing we need to do. We need to be not afraid to stand up and say something. They are cowards. They're just like bullies. Bullies are cowards deep inside. They just have a lot of bravado.
Yep.
So let's talk about what's kind of included in the spectrum of activism. Let's see what we got here. We have not participating in conversations you don't agree with. And I have to really agree with this. It was very satisfying in the beginning because I was angry and hurt and scared. It was very satisfying to lash out at somebody. I'm not proud of it. and what I mean is, saying, gosh, don't you understand what you've done? And the thing is, they don't. Some of them do. Some of them are turning around and doing it. But there's this next 4 years, or however long he's there,
hopefully less,
is going to take a lot of energy, especially if we all focus on it. So my advice would be to not participate in those conversations. Don't leave all of your energy there. You're going to need your energy. So if you don't agree, if you're there's conversations going out there and you don't agree with them, that doesn't have to be your world. You don't need to be a part of that. Now, I'm not talking about where something happens, right? You're in a situation, something happens. Yeah, call them out.
Mm-hmm.
But if you could spend the rest of your life trying to talk to people that you don't agree with, and I don't think that's necessarily a good use of your time and energy.
Right. Right. Even sometimes when I feel drained, even just by what I'm reading from different people on social media, I won't respond to the stuff that I know is blatantly, ridiculously false, but I will support or like the ones that are making sensible comments, instead of trying to stir up more sure to get involved and have somebody reply to me. I'll save my energy and I'll just I like the person who's actually talking sense. Yes. Like what they said.
Yeah. Yeah, and the other is, now this seems like it's diametrically opposed, but it's not. Sometimes it's speaking up in conversations where you have a differing opinion. And to your point, this happened the other day where somebody said, "Oh my gosh, that halftime show was the most ridiculous waste of time. I wasted a half hour of my time. I wish I had been in the kitchen." And I went on and I said, I thought it was amazing living art. While I didn't understand everything at the time, I understood it was living art. And looking at the symbolism afterwards proves that I was right, and I've found it incredibly enjoyable. Now, I didn't name call him. I didn't tell him he was stupid or how did you not. I was just, this is my experience. My opinion differs.
Yeah.
I thought this is what I saw. And then I had the same thing. People are coming by and clicking on it. Nobody said anything, but they clicked on it. And that's okay. And he never came and attacked me. I didn't attack him. There was no reason to attack me. I just had a differing opinion. It was my personal little piece of activism for this guy.
Yeah. And that's something I think to keep in mind too, is that there may be certain areas you have to just sort of understand your own energy and what you're willing and able to spend and where. Sort of like you have to do your own budget, your own energetic budget.
I love that. An energetic budget. I'm writing that down. Energetic. That's good.
Because there are certain places where, speaking for myself, I'm willing to spend a little extra energy to try to either, go against something, try to correct something that somebody's putting out there that's like, no, stop spreading this. It's not true. Or defend something or whatever. But then there's other situations or times where I'm like, I can't, I just don't have a dog in this fight. Like I can't expend more energy on this. I'm spread too thin. So it's not that you have to pick a level of engagement along the spectrum of activism and be at that level for every single topic that comes up, right? Or even every opportunity for something that comes up. I had originally planned to go march when they did the women's march here in Melbourne, and I just wasn't feeling great that day. And I thought, I don't think I can make it. I did drive by though and did my honk, 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 Yay. I'm with you in spirit, ladies.
Yeah.
But I didn't have the energy to go through and do that day. So there's, you can fall in different places on the spectrum, depending on what's going on with your energy or what the topic is or what the opportunity is to be active or to have your voice heard. So there's that to keep in mind kind of with all these things that we're talking about. So you just have to figure out when it makes sense for you to kind of go a little further, step a little further, or maybe outside your comfort zone. Things like that. So even like we talked about earlier, the idea of spending money and where you spend your money to support the companies that are doing what you feel is the right thing. At first, I remember thinking, I don't want to shop at Walmart anymore. Reality is that's very difficult to do for a long period of time because there's so many things that are easy and very accessible at Walmart. but I'm not going there nearly as much as I used to. So I've certainly reduced my spending there.
Mhm.
It's also very difficult to say I'm never going to, buy something from Amazon again. We've talked about that, I think, in a previous episode too, because it doesn't just hurt them. It, can hurt people that are working for them that need that income. So there's those kinds of things. But one thing that we did want to talk about specifically when it comes to the spending money thing is that February 28th
Yes.
is going to be that kind of national, I guess, what are they calling
Yeah,
it?
it's one day. It's called the 24-hour economic blackout. And if you
Yeah.
want to find more information about it, I don't think I put this on a banner.
I
But
did.
you did. Look at Jenny. She is on fire. It's jointhepeoplesunion.com. You can find all the information you need to about the 24-hour economic blackout. Now, what this is to do is to show the power of people, to show corporations that we have power, that they need us. This economic blackout, we're asking not to do this for your local people, your local
Right.
small businesses. Please take care of your local small businesses. But for the major corporations, just don't spend any money. If you don't need to spend money on the Friday the 20th, just don't do it. If you can, just 24 hours.
Yep.
24 hours. And the goal is to get us used to this. We'd like to do some longer ones in the future to show that we do have power and we'd like to have them listen to us. So
Yep.
that is that's a cool one. And there are other ones that are, I'm sure, going to be coming up, and we will try to make sure that we have the information for you when they come up. And of course, the things that we are familiar with: protesting, marching, going on marches. They have power because they're visual. They don't always have a quick impact as far as making changes happen, but they are still powerful. We need to be seen. We need to be seen in numbers. But the biggest changes have happened when we don't spend our money. That has been when the biggest changes have happened. When we don't spend money or we don't work, because they need us to do both.
Yep.
They need our money and they need us to work.
Yeah.
But joining a local organization that fights against, fascism, capitalism, whatever it is that you want, just joining local organizations and being a part of your community is a huge, huge deal.
Right. And the things that are more active, more kind of all encompassing and things like that would be things like running for office. Even for something that might seem kind of small would be local school boards and things like that. Of course, there's bigger things like, state government, federal government, stuff like that. But it's not something you really do kind of just drop the hat and say, hey, I'm going to go run for this. You can start with the smaller localized things like school boards.
Well, you'd be amazed at how much you can do being on your local boards. Look at what has happened because they had a long-term plan over the last 40 years to take over school boards and local governments. And so Moms for Liberty took over a bunch of the school boards down in Florida and have had a major, major impact on the Florida communities. I mean, look at all the book bans. A lot of that came out of Moms for Liberty taking over school boards. So don't think, well, this really doesn't matter. It does. Your local matters sometimes even more than your federal government.
Yep.
It's just so incredibly important.
Especially with some of what is happening now, supposedly being about throwing more power back to the states. So quite obviously, if you've got, if you're willing to get involved in either yourself running or supporting, someone else who is running, then, in a state or even city type of capacity, that's going to hold even more power in the near term as they talk about shutting down federal agencies and stuff like that and throwing things back to the states, like Department of Education. That's just going to collapse. There's just there's no way that'll stand. And that's part of the kind of ignorance that a lot of people don't get about that too, because all of the red states, except maybe one or two, would not be able to afford just from their state income having an education system like they have now. It would not support their public education system. But many of the blue states would have no problem supporting their own education systems. And yet, we're people that are voting blue are saying, no, the federal government needs to support that, which means we're okay with our dollars being used to support other states that don't bring in as much money, because we think everybody deserves to have a public education. Now, you can certainly argue about the types of things that are being taught and what's useful and what's not, but it's just, this is not the way to do it. And that's part of what does get me to get involved sometimes, is when I see that people are wanting changes for a decent reason. Like, yeah, our education system could be better. Not arguing with that. Yeah, it'd be great to get more of the misspending and fraud and stuff like that out of our government. Not disagreeing with that either. This is not the way. And that's what they don't get. And so there's even times when I think it maybe needed to come to a head in this fucked up, mixed up, painful way.
Oh my gosh. Fucked up, mixed up, painful way. Yes. There are so many times it just feels like it's beyond the Twilight Zone. I mean, I feel like I've just been dropped into an alternate reality.
Yeah.
Where are you? What are you doing?
It is crazy. Agreed. There need to be some real, and that's one of the things I have responded to some people on that are talking about, how could you people not be concerned about fraud in the government? Like, it's not that we're not concerned about fraud in the government. I'm more concerned about the people that are in there digging around and telling you they're finding fraud, but in the meantime, doing other stuff that they're not telling you about. Because they're like, oh, this is more transparency than we've ever had. No, this is, look, squirrel, while I go do this. And they don't accept that.
Yeah, I even saw one Republican, and I was happy to see this. It was a Republican congressman. And he stood up and he had charts just like Katie Porter. Love that.
Mm-hmm.
And and he said, great. So you found X number of $1 million that's being spent on this. Do you know how much that's worth in real government time? Okay, so you just saved the government 1 day's worth of bills. 1 day.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was really interesting because we don't understand, just like if I went from my own little business and I went to go work for an international company, and if I was in charge of their budget, the budgets would be something I didn't understand because they are apples and oranges. We can't understand the government's budget. I can't. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not any of any of those finance words, and a lot of the diatribes we're hearing from people about, look at all this wasteful spending, are from people that don't understand.
Absolutely.
And so I just can't. Yeah, that's just crazy. I can't.
And when people don't understand, it's very easy to just throw some key words in there and make them think, oh, yeah, I don't want my money going towards that. Yeah, I'm glad they found that.
Mm-hmm.
So, and one thing that I haven't had a chance to go and actually fact check through some independent sources, but I tend to believe what I've seen because I've seen it a few different ways, is that Musk was getting investigated by several different government agencies for the different types of funds that he was getting from the government and his companies. And it just so happens many of those agencies are the ones that he's recommending closing down. So that's where it's like, oh, transparency finally in the government. No, it's not.
No, it's not.
It's just not. And well, I'm glad to have billionaires in there because they have nothing else to gain. No, have you met these people? They don't stop until there's more power. Like,
they don't. They don't.
Yeah.
Well, this seems like a really good time to do a really quick pit stop into a commercial for my mastermind.
Absolutely.
So it's called Rebel, the Mastermind. It's a collective of bold women who are rewriting the rules. It's an intimate container. You'll be supported by like-minded individuals, women who are breaking free from nice girl conditioning, amplifying their voice. And we need people amplifying their voices right now, making bold moves in their lives and careers. My goal is to get us together. I, in the past, have done one-on-one coaching, and everything I'm doing right now is including a collective of people. I think we learn so much from ourselves, from each other, that it's not just me standing here telling you this is how you do this, but together that we can rise together as we face these challenges, not only in our business, but in our personal lives and community. And we'll have accountability, a very safe space where you can take your masks off and get real with each other. This is a real place, is a safe place, and it's a place where transformations happen. Stop second guessing and start leading unapologetically. You can go to my website at deidrebeecham.com and go into the Step Into Your Power, and you can see more information about the mastermind. Love to have you there. Awesome.
Yes.
And so now we have our resources. Be more aware. Just be more aware. Read books, documentaries. I know that Jenny and I have watched several documentaries. And they can be so eye-opening. The one about Amazon and consumerism is still, I can still see the pictures in my mind. It just blew my mind.
Yeah.
But there are books. Definitely recommend On Tyranny by Timothy Snyder. It's fantastic. Do you have any other books you want to recommend?
I don't have books off the top of my head, but I will say there are a bunch of good documentaries that I think are very educational to kind of tie together history and what's happening now on both Netflix and Prime. You found a few. I don't have HBO Max, but you have HBO Max, right? And there were a few on there as well, I think.
Yeah, and
so
it doesn't take much to find them. Here's a
Yeah.
book I'm reading right now. This thing is excellent. I thought I had dealt with a lot of my systemic racism upon understanding how much systemic racism was still in the way I think. And oh my goodness, if this didn't uncover even more, very humbling, eye-opening, and it makes it easier for me to see racism in others and still in myself. I will probably be racist until I die just because of how systemic it is. I'm trying to be much more mindful of how I am unconsciously being racist in my thinking or in my actions. And this has helped me to do a much better job. And there's tons out there. That is, there are so many. That just happens to be one I'm reading right now.
Yeah. Even looking for people who are I would say non-political to follow and kind of lean on for not commercialized shows or information sharing, but just factual. And I mean, the first person that comes to my mind is Heather Cox Richardson, who she's a political historian. She's not running for any kind of office. She's not representing one side or the other, but she's a professor of political history. So she knows how the country came to be, why certain things run the way they do, why some things that are happening are not a good idea in terms of how it's happened in the past. I mean, it's just a really good perspective that's honest and real. Like, find people like that aren't always, because there's several, podcasts and things like that you can watch. We mentioned Joe Rogan earlier, definitely leans towards the more of the Trump side of things, although he's starting to wake up to some of them. And there's 3 or 4 different podcasts that I've been watching lately that certainly are more on the progressive side of things. So there's times even when I'm watching them, even though I like a lot of what they say, there's times that I'm like, okay, so that's kind of pushing it. That's definitely a biased opinion in that one, not necessarily just, straight facts.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't think of anything that I've seen from someone like Heather Cox Richardson that seemed biased. It just seemed matter of fact to me.
Yeah. And another thing that can be really,
that.
yeah, and I love her. I think she's fantastic. I think another thing that can be really helpful is, and this isn't from a news perspective, this is more from a community perspective, because I think that one of the things that we don't do very well, and I'm talking about white people right now, that white people aren't very good at community. And in general, in general.
And honestly, probably church is the biggest driver of community for white people.
Exactly. And so what I have been doing, and it has been so incredibly educational, is listening to people that do community well. And who does community really well is Black people. I can hide the fact that I'm LGBT. I could grow out my hair. I could wear dresses. I could fake it. You know what? A Black person is a Black person. And when they walk outside, they're a Black person. They can't be anything else.
Mm-hmm.
And that was when I first thought about that for the first time. It was very challenging. I was like, wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. And so it's one of the reasons I keep my hair as short as it is. It's kind of a challenge to myself. I mean, I think I look good with short hair, but it's also kind of my personal activism.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to hide. I'm not hiding who I am. I already have the protection of white. I don't need more than that. But the beautiful thing about listening to Black creators, and I don't mean going on their pages and going, how do I build community? Don't do that. Please don't do this. Deidre said, no, please don't do that. Good. Please just listen. You'll be amazed at how much you learn. Just follow some Black creators. Look at your stream of people that you follow. Do you follow Black creators? If not, start. Mm-hmm. Start following some Black creators. Find some Black creators that you like what they're saying and start following them. You'll be amazed at what you learn just by listening.
Yeah.
Listen.
Yep.
And listen to how they develop community. Once you know how to be respectful, and I mean that because you really, it's a very tender place right now because they don't know who to trust. Just like we don't know what men to trust. They don't know what white people to trust.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Just like it's not all men, but it's men. Okay. It's not all white people, but it's white people.
Yep.
Okay. So please be kind. Just listen. And don't take offense when they say something about white people. Listen.
Yeah.
It's not about you. They're just talking about things. Just like we talk about men. They talk about white people.
Mm-hmm.
Chill the fuck out and listen. Okay.
Well, and even think about, has it been about you at some point? Because
Absolutely.
if you just listen, you might realize, holy shit, I've done that, not knowing that it was offensive.
That's happened.
Or that they took it that way or whatever, like definitely listen and
yeah. I've been offended before listening and going, oh, what? And then going, okay, wait.
Mm-hmm.
Why are you taking it that way? Calm down. Why are you taking it that way? What are they saying that feels offensive to you? Why does it feel offensive to you?
Right.
Oh, because I have systemic racism in me. Because I think I'm better than. And I wasn't thinking actively. That wasn't in my forefront of my thought. I think I'm better. It was somewhere deep ingrained in these subconscious thoughts that somehow got embedded that is there. And wow. And so you'll learn more about yourself as well. So that was a really good point, Jenny.
Yeah. Well, and even to that point, that made me think of the fact that certainly in terms of the shows that are available out there to watch these days, there's a shit ton more diversity than there used to be. Yeah. And I think that's a great thing, but pay attention even to the shows that you're watching.
Yeah.
Because the more you see something, even if it's not, you're not running into situations in your normal everyday life as you go around town or whatever, you may be able to see things in the shows, in the scenarios that the shows come up with, where you go, oh, yeah, they're saying, either, that's never something I've never seen before, and so I feel uncomfortable with it. But now that I've seen it, I can start to think about it and feel more comfortable with it. Or the opposite side of that of, oh, I've said that before. They're making fun of that as being racist or whatever, and holy shit, that has been me in the past. I need to make sure I don't do that. So you can learn. That's one thing you can learn even just by watching certain shows and making sure that you are incorporating diversity into what you're seeing, what you're feeding your brain. Because the systemic racism has come from culturally what we saw, in the public, but also what we were getting fed through TV shows. Back in the day, mostly white people on TV shows, certainly all straight people on TV shows back in the day, but that stuff is now changing. So you have an opportunity to see different things and understand things more without having to necessarily go through all these different scenarios yourself.
Exactly.
So make sure you're exposing yourself to diversity and variety just to be able to understand what's going on out there, which also brings me to, remember we brought up, I think a few episodes ago, that thing that's all over fucking Facebook about 1440 or whatever that new news thing.
That's so funny. I was just thinking about that same thing because you did the research.
Yeah. Well, all I did was look at the picture. I was skeptical of anybody that was trying to, because, Newsmax, all these other little spin-off things have said, we're going to give you the real news, the truth. And I'm like, your truth. And so as soon as I saw those articles or those ads, I was like, well, what's the spin on it though? And the first thing I found was they started putting in their ads the picture of their staff. Nobody beyond a shade of white.
Single person is white.
Yeah. And now there's men and women. I have no idea what their sexual preference is. I mean, so, there's at least men and women. It wasn't all white, straight Christian males, but I would almost guarantee every single one of them was Christian, maybe even Mormon. And definitely no color whatsoever. Probably nobody who is at least out in terms of LGBTQ. They might be, but not openly. Yeah. And so that's not just, non-biased news source.
Nope.
And then, the research I did was to find out that the guy that owns it and started it is a former Republican senator.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily unbiased. So you have to go beyond just what people tell you. And that's one of the things I like
even
about
us, although we're very trustworthy.
But that's one of the things that I think I kind of like about Heather Cox Richardson. She's not out there trying to promote herself as, hey, listen to me, I'll give you the factual stuff. She just gives you the factual stuff. Take it or leave it. This is what I'm putting out there. I'm doing a service to my fellow Americans by giving them this perspective that incorporates actual history, actual, So if people are pushing too hard that, oh, this is how I am, listen to me, need to kind of check behind the curtain.
And we're going to put more resources. I just realized we're getting a little bit past our time, but we're going to put more resources on our website. Did you see that page that I made for us on?
No, I haven't seen that yet. Okay. I have a list.
Yeah. I made a page for us on our website. So Jenny will make sure that has some things on it. And as far as places to go to, it's going to be an extensive, though not complete.
Right.
Extensive, though not complete list of places that you can go to for information that we have researched, looked up, and found for you and for ourselves as well, including the 5 Calls app, which we'll put up as well. And don't forget about the 5 Calls app. This is a great app that you can download, and it will tell you with a click of a button. You do have to put your zip code in, but it'll tell you who you need to call for whatever issue that you need to call for. And let's get the government to do what we need them to do, which is work for us rather than for the oligarchy that seems to be coming in or has come in.
Yeah, and I've seen from several different resources that making these calls is really what gets their attention, because there are call reports that each representative looks at.
Yeah. And I don't know, did we show this?
Yeah.
So this is exactly how irritating the calls are. This is she is a Democrat, and she said that she found out that the Democrats in government are pissed at liberal groups like Move On and Indivisible because they are telling people to call to get them to do things, and they're being inundated with calls, and so they're angry. And she did a video about, oh yeah, well, get ready to be angrier. And she doubled down. That video, I believe we put that up. Let me go over here and look. Okay, it's not up yet, but it will be up soon because I uploaded it before we came on the air. Yep, there it is. So it's already on our Facebook page so that you can take a look at it. So you can watch her talk about what she's doing since she found that out.
Yeah.
And I loved seeing that.
And really, this is something I feel like we should be doing. I feel like so many of us have gotten, I guess, maybe lazy about letting our representatives.
Complacent.
Yeah, we've definitely become complacent about speaking our truth or letting our voices be heard in terms of what we want to see in government. And therefore, corporations, lobbyists, organizations have absolutely taken over the preference when it comes to, who's the squeaky wheel that's going to get the grease from our representatives. Well, if we're not actively letting them know what we want more than just every 2 or 4 years or whatever we vote, who's there in their ear? It's these other people spending tons of money either to help them get reelected or whatever.
Yeah, lobbyists.
And that's how they're voting. So it's sort of like as much of our duty to do this kind of thing as it is to vote.
Absolutely. And we're going to continue talking about activism next week. Next week's episode, we're calling True Stories of Activism. And if you have any true story of activism you'd like to share with us, please go ahead and put it in our comments section, and we'll share it with the audience next week. And again, if you enjoyed today's episode, subscribe, follow, love us, share with your friends. If you have a topic, question, or if you want to be a guest, please go to our website, unleashedafpodcast.com, and visit WWJDD. What would Jenny and Deidre do? We'd love to hear from you. You have anything else you want to share with the audience this week?
No, I think we've covered a lot, especially had a couple of weeks in between there. So
yeah, so considering we missed 2 weeks, we're not too bad. We're about 12 minutes over. That's not terrible. Yeah. Okay, so we look forward to being with you next week. Until then, take care, but get unleashed AF.
I'm done trying to live up to others' expectations. Family, society, class, race, sex, or religions. It's time to break free from the isms that make us feel like we're in prison. I'm ready to be